Chosen one. This moment is not random. This message has been stirred in the Spirit, carved in heaven, and released for you, right now. Because God has seen your tears. He's heard your silent cries in the night. He's watched you circle the same mountain, stumble through the same valley, repeat the same pain, and He is declaring, enough. You've been surviving in cycles. Cycles of fear you can't explain. Cycles of shame you thought you were done with. Cycles of almost, but never quite breaking through. Cycles of starting over, again and again, while pretending you're okay. But behind every silent prayer you whispered, behind every moment you said, God, I can't do this anymore. He was there. He was working. He was waiting for this exact moment to break the cycle. This isn't just a message. It's a divine interruption. You didn't stumble upon this. You were summoned. Heaven put your name on this word because it's your season to be released. Released from patterns that don't serve your purpose. Released from bondage that didn't start with you, but ends with you. Released from battles your family fought but never won. You've wondered, why do I keep ending up here? In the same emotions, the same relationships, the same spiritual dry places. But what you didn't know is this. God has been preparing the ground beneath your feet to shift, not just to give you relief, but to give you release. Because this cycle isn't just a burden. It's been a battle for your identity. The enemy knows what's on the other side of your breakthrough. He's not just attacking your peace. He's attacking your purpose. Because the moment you rise, the moment you finally walk free, the moment the chains fall for good, you become a threat to every lie he's ever spoken over your bloodline. And let's be honest, you've learned how to function in dysfunction. You've learned how to smile while stuck. You've learned how to press on with a limp that no one sees. But God didn't create you to manage your bondage. He created you to master it. This is your moment. And hear me. You don't need another motivational word. You don't need another emotional high. You need a divine shift. You need the kind of breakthrough that isn't just felt. It's lived. The kind that turns generational curses into generational blessings. The kind that leaves you saying, I'll never go back to that place again. This message is your permission slip to exit the wilderness, to break the loop, to shatter the ceiling. God is not just breaking a cycle. He's breaking the cycle. The one that's tried to convince you that freedom is for everyone but you. So lean in, chosen one, because something holy is about to happen in you. And when it does, you'll look back and realize this was the day everything started to change. But how does God break something that's held on so tightly for so long? How does He undo what feels like it's always been a part of you? That's what we're about to uncover. There comes a time in every believer's life when heaven doesn't just speak, it breaks in. And this is one of those times. Because, chosen one, what God is doing in you is not surface level. It's not temporary. It's not a fleeting touch that leaves you unchanged. No, this is deeper. This is deliverance at the root. This is the hand of God reaching beneath the symptoms and pulling out the source of what has kept you circling the same desert, trapped in the same battles, bound by patterns that don't reflect the person you were created to become. You see, what you've been calling just life may actually be spiritual repetition, a cycle orchestrated not by circumstance but by a stronghold. And strongholds are not broken by trying harder. They're not broken by repeating resolutions or promising yourself, this time will be different. They are broken by revelation, when light from God's word and presence exposes the dark patterns that have held you captive, and you finally see them not as part of you, but as enemies to the calling on your life. Because that's what this is about, isn't it? Your calling. That's the real target. The enemy hasn't been attacking you just to make you sad, or tired, or frustrated. He's been attacking your awareness. He's been fighting to keep you blind to the fact that God placed power inside of you that, once awakened, will not only free you, but shake everything around you. And for some of you, the cycle you've been stuck in is not one you created. It was passed down. It was spoken over you. It was modeled before you had the language to even define it. And yet here you are, bearing the weight of it like it's yours to carry. But I came to tell you, it's not. You were not born to repeat the dysfunction. You were born to redeem the story. And this is where God steps in, not just as comforter, but as chain breaker. He is the God who steps into cycles, into Egypt, into wilderness, into prisons, into dry bones, and speaks a word that interrupts everything. When he speaks, captives walk free. When he moves, graves open and destinies are revived. When he touches your life, what was normal becomes unfamiliar, and what was broken begins to mend. And maybe that's what's been happening in you lately. Maybe the restlessness you've felt, the discomfort, the divine agitation, has all been the trembling before the breakthrough. Because before God breaks the cycle around you, he begins by breaking it within you. He stirs your spirit. He disrupts your comfort. He makes you question what you've settled for. That stirring, that holy dissatisfaction, isn't a sign of failure. It's the first sign of freedom. You were never meant to normalize bondage. You were never meant to build a life around wounds you haven't healed from. But healing begins when you stop agreeing with the lie that says, "This is just the way I am," because you are not your trauma. You are not your addiction. You are not your past. You are not your mistakes. You are who he says you are. And what he says over you breaks every label that tried to define you. God is calling you to rise. To rise out of cycles that convinced you you're disqualified. To rise out of shame that's whispered you're too broken. To rise out of fear that's paralyzed your steps. To rise into the version of yourself that he already sees. Strong, free, whole, and walking in purpose. You've believed in God. But now, he's asking you to believe what he says about you. Because here's the revelation. Cycles don't break because we're strong enough to break them. They break because God is faithful enough to step into them. The power doesn't come from your performance. It flows from his presence. And when his presence floods a pattern, that pattern loses its grip. God is not asking you to fix yourself. He's asking you to surrender. Because what you surrender, he will heal. What you release, he will restore. What you lay down, he will resurrect. And what held you captive will become the testimony that sets others free. But how do you step into that kind of freedom? How do you walk away from chains that have lived in your mind and body for years, sometimes decades? How do you move forward when everything in your past is trying to pull you back? That's what we're about to uncover. Because to break free, you first have to understand where you've been, and what God has been doing while you were waiting. Let's go deeper. Before you can walk into freedom, before you can break the cycle that's been holding you back, you have to understand the weight and the wonder of the call that's been placed upon your life. Because if you don't know what you're called to, you'll keep settling for what you were never meant to carry. And for some of you, this is the true battle beneath the surface. Not just the visible struggle. Not just the pattern of failure or discouragement or addiction. The real war is over your identity. Because if the enemy can keep you confused about who you are, he can keep you stuck in places you were never meant to stay. He doesn't have to destroy you outright. He just has to distract you long enough to make you miss what heaven has spoken over your life. Think of Moses, a man chosen by God, anointed from birth, preserved through genocide, raised in the palace of Pharaoh himself. And yet, when God appeared to him in the burning bush, calling him into destiny, Moses didn't leap at the invitation. He hesitated. He wrestled. He questioned his own worth. "Who am I," he said, "that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt?" Exodus 3 verse 11. Isn't that what we do too? We hear the whisper of God's call, deep in our spirit, and our first instinct isn't always obedience. Sometimes our first instinct is fear, insecurity, doubt. We look at our past and disqualify ourselves. We point to our limitations like Moses did. "I'm not a good speaker. I'm not qualified. I've made too many mistakes." But God doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called. He called Moses, not because Moses was perfect, but because Moses was chosen. And when you're chosen, your past doesn't cancel your future. In fact, it becomes the soil in which your purpose is planted. Some of you have spent years looking at your own reflection and failing to recognize the calling that's been etched into your very being. You've grown used to hearing the voice of your fear louder than the voice of your Father. You've allowed the world to define your limitations without realizing that heaven has already declared your potential. But that's about to change. Because the first step in breaking any cycle is knowing that you were never meant to stay in it. Moses could have stayed in the wilderness. He could have lived the rest of his life tending sheep, hiding from his past, believing that he had missed his moment. But God showed up, in the middle of a normal day, in the middle of his routine, in the middle of what felt like obscurity. And that's exactly how God operates. He doesn't wait for your life to be perfect before he speaks purpose. He speaks into the very place where you feel forgotten, unqualified, and unworthy, and he reminds you, "I see you, I know you, and I've chosen you anyway." And when Moses finally responded to the call, even through fear, even through trembling, it didn't just change his life. It changed the lives of an entire nation. Because hear this, your calling is never just about you. It's about everyone who will be impacted when you finally say yes. When you finally rise. When you finally break the cycle that's been whispering you'll never be enough. You have no idea what's waiting on the other side of your obedience. You have no idea how many people are praying for the very breakthrough that's hidden inside of your yes. That's why the enemy has tried so hard to keep you paralyzed. Because he knows, if you ever start walking in who you really are, generational chains will fall. Cities will shift. Strongholds will be shaken. And every lie that's been spoken over you will be silenced by the sound of your obedience. But it starts here, in the place of surrender, in the moment where you stop measuring yourself by what you see and start trusting the one who sees everything, beginning to end. Yes, you may feel unworthy. Yes, you may feel small. Yes, you may feel like you've missed too many chances. But God still says, "I've called you." And when God calls, he makes a way. This is not about being ready. This is about being willing. Willing to say yes even with shaking hands. Willing to walk forward even with unanswered questions. Willing to believe that if God started something in you, he will finish it. Moses wasn't perfect, but he was chosen. And so are you. And once you realize you're called, the next question becomes, can you still trust God when your calling doesn't come easy? When the road ahead is filled with resistance? When your obedience leads not to a blessing, but to a battle? Because chosen one, before every breakthrough, comes the test. You see, what we often don't realize, what our hearts struggle to grasp when we first say yes to God, is that the calling will not always lead to comfort. The promise will not always feel like progress. And the breakthrough we long for will not always come in the way we expect, because before every blessing, there is always a test. Before every crown, there's a cross. Chosen one, just because the road is hard doesn't mean you heard God wrong. Look at Joseph, another man marked by a divine dream, another life saturated with purpose from a young age. He didn't ask for the vision. He didn't strive for the spotlight. The dream was given by God himself, placed in Joseph's spirit like a fire that couldn't be extinguished. But instead of immediate favor and promotion, what came next was betrayal, slavery, false accusations, and years of waiting in a prison cell for a promise that seemed to have been forgotten. Can you imagine what that must have felt like? To know that God had called you, to carry the weight of a dream bigger than your own understanding, and then to be thrown into a pit by your own brothers, to be sold like property, to be falsely accused of a crime you didn't commit, and left to rot in a place no one saw? How easy it would have been for Joseph to give up, to stop believing, to assume that the cycle he was trapped in, the cycle of being rejected, used, and overlooked, was now his new reality. But what Joseph couldn't see was that even the prison was part of the process. Even the pit had purpose, because God never wastes the test. He uses it to refine what He's already ordained. That's where you might be right now. In the pit, in the prison, in the place between the promise and the fulfillment. You've obeyed, you've prayed, you've done everything you know to do, and yet the door hasn't opened. The blessing hasn't come, and maybe, just maybe, you've started to wonder if you missed your moment. But hear me, you didn't miss it. You're being prepared for it. There are things God needs to do in you before He can release what He wants to do through you. Because the palace will crush you if the prison hasn't shaped you. The crown will destroy you if the pit hasn't humbled you. The anointing you carry is powerful, but if it's not paired with endurance, it will burn out before it bears fruit. That's why the test is so intense. Because the calling on your life is so significant. The enemy wants you to misinterpret the test as rejection. He wants you to believe that the delay is denial, that the silence means abandonment, that the pain proves God changed His mind. But that's a lie. The truth is, the test is confirmation that the promise is still alive. If God were done with you, the enemy wouldn't be bothering you. But because you are so close to what God spoke over you, the pressure has increased. You're not under attack because you're weak. You're under attack because you're dangerous. Because when you step into what's next, hell knows it can't stop what heaven has released. And the test, as painful as it is also sacred. Because it's in the test that your character is forged. It's in the test that you learn to hear God's voice when everyone else is silent. It's in the test that pride is stripped, that faith is built, that endurance is cultivated, that dependence on God becomes your lifeline. Joseph didn't know it, but every day in that prison was a rehearsal for royalty. Every time he served others in confinement, he was being trained to lead in freedom. Every unjust moment was preparing him to steward justice on a national scale. When the door finally opened, when Pharaoh sent for him, Joseph wasn't just ready. He was refined. And the same is true for you. Don't despise the test. Don't curse the season that seems slow, frustrating, or invisible. God is doing something in you that you'll need for the next level. Because the blessing is coming. And when it comes, you won't just step into it with excitement. You'll step into it with authority. You'll know what it cost. You'll carry the weight of it well. You'll steward it wisely, because you didn't skip the process. And isn't that the miracle? That the very pain meant to break you is actually preparing you to carry the blessing? God never wastes the waiting. He never wastes the battle. He never wastes the test. But the key to passing through it is trust. Trusting that God is still good, even when the outcome doesn't match the timeline you hoped for. Trusting that He's working all things together, even when it feels like everything is falling apart. Trusting that the prison isn't permanent, and the pit isn't your final destination. Joseph came out of the prison not just to be free, but to bring freedom to others. And so will you. You've been called. You've been tested. But now, it's time to be loosed. Because there's another cycle that's about to be broken, and this one isn't external. It lives in your thoughts, in the shadows of shame, in the places where fear masquerades as protection. And when God touches those inner places, everything changes. Some chains don't rattle. Some prisons don't have bars. Some of the deepest forms of bondage are the ones no one else can see. The kind that lives inside your mind, buried beneath smiles and routines, locked behind shame and silence. And maybe that's the cycle God is speaking to in you right now. Because long after the relationship ended, the shame stayed. Long after the trauma passed, the fear remained. Long after the sin was confessed, the guilt still lingered. And you've been walking with God, serving, giving, trying to move forward. But deep down, a part of you still feels stuck. Stuck in thoughts you didn't choose but can't seem to silence. Stuck in patterns of anxiety that show up uninvited. Stuck in the belief that if people really knew what you carried, they wouldn't love you. And maybe God wouldn't either. But hear me, chosen one. God is not intimidated by your chains. He's not disgusted by your wounds. He's not shocked by your struggle. He already knew where you were bound before you ever cried out for freedom. And even now, even in the darkest corner of your inner world, He is reaching in, not to shame you, not to scold you, but to set you free. Because true freedom isn't just about what others can see. It's about what no one else knows, but God still wants to heal. There's a moment in the Gospels where Jesus enters a synagogue and sees a woman who had been bent over for 18 years. Scripture says she was crippled by a spirit, unable to straighten up at all. And in that moment, Jesus doesn't ask her what she did to get that way. He doesn't interrogate her past. He doesn't make her perform for her healing. He simply speaks. He says, "Woman, you are set free from your infirmity." Luke 13 verse 12. And then, He touches her. And for the first time in nearly 2 decades, she straightens up and praises God. This is the power of our Savior. He speaks to the thing no one else sees. He touches the part that's been twisted by shame, silence, and spiritual oppression. And He declares freedom, not because you earned it, but because He paid for it. Some of you have been spiritually bent over for years, hiding the weight, functioning under it, living around it. You've smiled through services, raised your hands through worship, and yet something in you still feels bowed down by a burden you can't name. But the same voice that spoke to that woman is speaking to you. You are set free. Free from the lie that says you'll never change. Free from the inner critic that repeats every failure. Free from the fear that tells you you're too far gone. Free from the unspoken wounds that control your reactions. Free from the bitterness that grew roots while you were just trying to survive. Because cycles don't just live in behaviors. They live in beliefs. And the moment God shifts your belief, the behavior starts to follow. The chain is not just in the addiction. It's in the belief that you'll always be addicted. The prison is not just in the anger. It's in the lie that this is the only way you can protect yourself. The bondage is not just in the sin. It's in the shame that keeps you from bringing it to the light. But whom the Son sets free is free indeed. John 8 verse 36. And true freedom is not the absence of struggle. It's the presence of surrender. It's standing in front of God with nothing to hide, and still hearing Him say, "I want you." Not just the cleaned-up version. Not just the Sunday version. The raw, broken, real version. Because it's in that place, when your wounds are exposed and your walls are down, that the chains lose their power. Some of you have been waiting for a moment, a breakthrough, a miracle, and here it is. The miracle is this: God never needed you to fix yourself. He only needed you to invite Him in, into the fear, into the doubt, into the unforgiveness, into the memory you try to outrun, into the place you've never told anyone about. That's where He does His greatest work. You don't have to stay bound, not by what they did, not by what you did, not by what life took from you, not by what shame has whispered in the night. The door is open, and when you walk through it, you're not just walking away from your past. You're walking into a future that hell has been trying to keep you from your whole life. So rise up, chosen one. Shake off the weight. Lift up your eyes. You are not who the chains said you were. You are not what the shame tried to name you. You are a child of the Most High God, and you are being loosed, not just to be free, but to walk in power. And that's where we go next. Because once the chains are broken, once the prison is opened, the real question is, will you step out in boldness? Will you walk on what once held you down? Because freedom is only the beginning. Freedom is never the finish line. It's the doorway, the beginning of a new walk, a new weight, a new authority. Because once God breaks the cycle that held you back, the question becomes, will you now rise and walk in the power that's always been yours but was hidden beneath the pain? So many believers stop at deliverance, but never cross into dominion. They celebrate that the chains are gone but still live as if they're bound. They're out of the prison, but the prison hasn't yet gotten out of them. And God is saying, I didn't just set you free to breathe again. I set you free to build, to lead, to heal, to speak, to walk in power and purpose. This is the moment where you stop seeing yourself as just a survivor. You are more than what you've been through. You are not defined by what you overcame. You are now empowered by it. But stepping into that power, it takes faith. It takes a decision. And it takes a holy kind of courage. Think of Peter. There he was, in a boat with the other disciples, tossed by waves, surrounded by fear. And then, in the middle of the storm, Jesus appears, walking on the water, moving in a realm that defied the natural. And Peter says something that most of us would never dare. Lord, if it is you, tell me to come to you on the water. Matthew 14 verse 28. And Jesus says one word, come. In that moment, Peter had a choice. Stay in the boat, where it was somewhat safe, somewhat familiar, even though it was still in the storm, or step out into something supernatural, something risky, something that didn't make sense. And he stepped out. He stepped out not because the waves calmed, not because he suddenly felt capable. He stepped out because the word was enough. The invitation was enough. The voice of Jesus was enough. And for a moment, Peter walked. He did the impossible. He moved in a dimension that broke every natural law. Why? Because when God calls you, He also enables you. His word doesn't just instruct, it empowers. But here's the part we often miss. Peter didn't sink because he failed. He sank because he got distracted. He looked at the waves, felt the wind, and forgot the word. And that's the danger when we step into divine power. We will be tempted to define our capability by the storm around us instead of the God within us. And still, Jesus didn't let him drown. He reached out, caught him, lifted him, and walked him back. That's the grace of stepping out in divine power. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be willing. Chosen one, God is calling you to walk in something greater, to speak when you used to stay silent, to pray with boldness when you used to doubt, to lead where you once followed, to prophesy, to heal, to declare, to stand, to move like someone who knows that heaven backs every step you take. But walking in power means letting go of permission slips. You're not waiting for people to approve it. You're not waiting for your past to clean itself up. You're not waiting until you feel qualified. You're moving because God said, "Come." You're stepping into rooms that once intimidated you. You're stepping into assignments that once overwhelmed you. You're stepping into conversations, decisions, ministries, callings that once seemed too big. Because now you understand, it was never about your ability. It was always about His authority. The same Spirit that raised Christ from the dead lives in you. Romans 8 verse 11. So why are you still walking like a victim when heaven has declared you victorious? Why are you still asking to be used when God is saying, "I already chose you. This is your time to rise," not in pride, not in self-promotion, but in the quiet confidence that says, "I know who I am because I know whose I am." Every scar on your story becomes a symbol of God's glory. Every weakness becomes a platform for His strength. Every no becomes the boundary that pushes you closer to His yes. You are no longer bound. You are no longer hidden. You are no longer waiting to be released. You are walking in it now. Don't let the fear of sinking keep you in the boat. Don't let the memory of past failure make you sit when God is saying, "Stand." There is kingdom work to do. There are people waiting on the other side of your obedience. There is healing in your hands. There is fire in your voice. There is power in your posture. And when you walk in that power, you don't just break cycles. You destroy them completely. You become the one in your bloodline who says, "It ends with me, and from this point forward, blessing begins." You've been called. You've been tested. You've been set free. You've been empowered. And now, chosen one, it's time to rise fully into the life you were born to live. Chosen one, you've come too far to turn back now. You've survived the pit. You've endured the prison. You've watched God tear chains off your soul that you thought you'd wear forever. And now, here you stand, on the edge of a new beginning, standing in the doorway of destiny with your heart still beating, your spirit still hungry, and the fire of heaven flickering inside of you. But the question remains, what will you do now? Because this is more than a moment. It's a line in the sand. And you don't come to a moment like this and leave unchanged. You don't hear God speak, break cycles, lift burdens, and walk away like it was just another message. No, this is different. This is holy ground. This is the place where everything shifts, not because your circumstances are perfect, but because your spirit is finally aligned with heaven. You're no longer waiting for permission. You're no longer asking to be seen. You're no longer bound by who you used to be. Now you must move. Move like someone who has heard from God. Move like someone who knows the chains are broken. Move like someone who has nothing left to lose, because your identity is no longer in what you lost, but in what you've gained in Him. Let go of the excuses. Let go of the fear. Let go of the version of you that was content with survival. God is not calling you to survive anymore. He's calling you to reign. And it won't always be easy. The enemy will whisper that you're still the same, that nothing has really changed, that freedom is just an emotional high. But you will silence him, not with arguments, but with action. You'll walk anyway. You'll praise anyway. You'll take the next step, even with trembling feet, because obedience isn't based on how you feel. It's based on who you know your Father to be. Remember what God told Joshua when Moses was gone and the time had come to step into the promised land. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. Joshua 1 verse 9. He's with you. Still. Now. Always. So go forward. Not in your strength, but in His. Go forward. Even if the people around you don't understand. Go forward. Even if the terrain is unfamiliar. Even if the future looks like a mountain. God doesn't ask you to know the way. He asks you to follow His voice. Because here's what no one may have told you before. Your freedom was never just about you. The reason the enemy fought you so hard is because your breakthrough is going to break chains in others. The reason the test was so intense is because your story is going to unlock healing in those who hear it. The reason you felt the resistance is because you're stepping into authority. Spiritual authority. Kingdom authority. The kind that doesn't need a title, a pulpit, or a platform. The kind that walks into a room and darkness has to flee. The kind that wakes up and heaven rejoices because a son or daughter of the King is finally living like one. Chosen one, you're not who you used to be. And you don't belong in the places you used to sit. That version of you, the bound, broken, insecure, ashamed version, that person doesn't exist anymore. God has made all things new. So take your position. Lift your head. Shake the dust off. Say yes with every fiber of your being. Because this is your moment. Not someday. Not when everything lines up. Not when you feel perfectly ready. Now. This is your burning bush. This is your prison to palace moment. This is your come on the water. This is your invitation to step into power, to break the cycle for good, and to never look back again. Will you take it? Will you finally believe what heaven has spoken about you? Will you walk into the life that fear tried to steal, shame tried to bury, and the enemy tried to delay? This is your time. This is your turning point. This is your breakthrough. And if you choose to rise, if you choose to move, nothing will ever be the same again. Chosen one, take a breath. Let it settle in. Let the truth you've just received take root deep within your spirit. You are not behind. You are not disqualified. You are not forgotten. You are not too late. You are not too broken. You are right on time for what God is unfolding in your life. You are exactly where you need to be to receive this word. Not a second too early, not a moment too late. Because the cycles that have held you are being severed. The spiritual ceilings that once kept you contained have been shattered. And the old labels, the ones that used to echo in your mind, have been silenced by the voice of your Father saying, "You are mine. You are chosen. You are free. What the enemy meant for evil, God is turning for good. What was meant to destroy you is becoming the very thing that defines your strength. What held you down is now the foundation you'll stand on as a testimony of God's delivering power. Because He doesn't just bring people out, He raises them up. And He's raising you up. You may still feel a little unsteady. That's okay. God doesn't need you to be certain. He just needs you to be surrendered. The strength will come in the steps. The confidence will come in the walking. The fruit will follow the obedience. All you have to do is keep saying yes. Yes to healing. Yes to purpose. Yes to freedom. Yes to power. Yes to the future God is unfolding. One step at a time. One battle at a time. One miracle at a time. The pain wasn't wasted. The struggle wasn't pointless. Every tear, every unanswered prayer, every sleepless night, God saw them all. And He's been weaving something beautiful through every broken thread. So don't fear what's ahead. Don't second-guess your freedom. Don't downplay what God is doing in you because others can't yet see it. When Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead, the first thing He said afterward was, "Take off the grave clothes and let him go." John 11 verse 44. Because resurrection is not just about coming back to life. It's about leaving behind everything that doesn't belong in your future. It's time to take off the grave clothes, the mindset, the guilt, the heaviness, the "I'm not enough" thinking. It doesn't fit you anymore. It never did. You're alive now. Alive in the Spirit. Alive in your purpose. Alive in the promises of God that can no longer be delayed. And here's what you need to hold on to. What God has planned for you is bigger than what you've lost. What He's about to do will redeem every dark season you walked through. The restoration is coming. The open doors are coming. The divine connections, the fresh anointing, the new vision, it's all being released. Because the cycle didn't just break, it broke for good. And you, chosen one, are about to walk in a season that looks nothing like the one you came out of. So lift your eyes, straighten your shoulders, speak life over yourself. Walk with a new boldness. Because your story didn't end in the prison, it begins in the palace. The dry places are behind you. The wilderness is behind you. The confusion is behind you. Your next step is glory. And what God is about to do in your life, eyes have not seen, ears have not heard, and no mind has imagined. 1 Corinthians 2 verse 9. You've waited. You've wept. You've been faithful in the unseen. Now, it's time to walk into the fulfillment. If this word stirred something deep in you, don't keep it to yourself. You're not alone in this journey. There are others right now, walking through the same deserts, climbing out of the same pits, waiting for confirmation that God still sees them. If this message was for you, if you felt God speaking directly to your heart, share that in the comments below. You never know how your testimony, your breakthrough, even your honesty, could be the very spark someone else needs. Let this space be a place of faith and freedom, a place where chains break in community, a place where we call each other higher, speak life, and remind one another that God is still moving, still healing, still breaking cycles. So speak up. Testify. Encourage someone who's one step behind you. And if you're still in the middle of your fight, let us know so we can stand with you in prayer. This isn't just a video. It's a gathering of chosen ones. It's a movement of healing. And it's only just beginning. This message comes to you through AI narration, but its meaning and impact remain as powerful and authentic as always.